After designing the sample, we have to ask ourselves a new question. How can we gather responses to our survey? When we administer our questionnaire to potential respondents, we face several challenges, which result in the risk that not all the people in our sample will answer, either because we are not able to reach them or because they simply do not want to answer. Therefore, we need to define the concept of response rate, that is the ratio between the number of actual respondents and the number of people who have been contacted. This is very important because even if we have done a rigorous random sampling, when the response rate is too low, we are not able to generalize our results. In order to reduce this risk, we generally perform two types of actions. First, we sample from the population a number of individuals greater than the target sample size, in order to take into account the response rate. For example, if we expect a response rate of 50% and we target a sample of 100 respondents, we will extract 200 contacts from the population. Second, we need to adopt all possible means to maximize our response rate, because otherwise we have the risk that the final sample is not really representative of the population. This issue is called non-response bias. If the people who refuse to answer our survey are not random, then also the final sample will be non-random. For example, if we are investigating the adoption of a new technologies such as blockchain, we may risk that the people who don't even know the term will simply not answer at all. In this way, the final sample will be biased because it will contain the answers only of those who are familiar with the term, and therefore it will not represent the entire population. But what can we do to maximize the response rate? Besides doing our best in designing the questionnaire, as we have already discussed, we need to adopt the best method to contact respondents and gather their answers. We may choose between self-administered surveys, that is a survey in which the respondent autonomously fills in answers into a questionnaire, and an assisted survey, in which an interviewer asks questions to an interviewee, and then the same interviewer records the answers. For example, submitting an online questionnaire is a form of self-administered survey, because the respondent is autonomous in reading questions and answering. A telephone interview, instead, is an assisted survey, because the interviewer asks questions and then records the answer. A self-administered survey is expected to be more efficient, because there is no need to have an interviewer for each interviewee, who is free to answer anytime and anywhere, and it is also less biased, because questions and answers are not mediated by the interviewer. This clearly remarks once more the importance of a bulletproof design of the questionnaire. In the IPS project, the choice has been for a self-administered online survey, exactly for the reasons just mentioned. More freedom for the respondent in terms of when and where to answer, no risk of interviewer bias, and less need for experienced researchers to conduct the time-consuming activity of interviewing. Focusing on self-administered surveys, today online surveys have replaced the traditional paper-based method, given their many advantages. No need to print and mail questionnaires back and forth, no need to manually record answers, lower error rate thanks to automated controls, and possibility to customize the questionnaire dynamically. For example, a section can be activated only if relevant, on the basis of previous answers. However, we need to pay attention to some critical features of online surveys. It is important that the respondent can save partial answers and complete the survey later, or go back and modify answers. This also implies that each respondent receives a unique link to the questionnaire, or is somehow identified, also to avoid the risk of respondents who do not match the population and sampling criteria. It is also important to be able to fill in the questionnaire from different devices and operating systems, to avoid losing potential respondents due to technical issues. The drawback of online surveys today is that people are overwhelmed by communication and surveys. Therefore, the response rate is becoming lower and lower, and it is very difficult even to attract the attention of potential respondents. For this reason, it is recommended not to send out thousands of invitations, even if it is technically easy to do, because the resulting response rate is generally very low. We can obtain a much better result by focusing on a smaller number of contacts and do our best to get in direct contact with them, exploiting all the available channels: email, telephone, social media, and so on. In this way, we can present the project and hopefully increase the commitment of the respondent. It is important to prepare a personalized invitation with a clear presentation of the project, its goals and expected results, as well as the estimated time for completing the survey. It is also critical to ensure the confidentiality of the data. Answers will be treated anonymously, and results will be shared only in aggregated form, without the possibility to identify single answers. Often also incentives are used to further motivate respondents. Incentives can be, for example, the possibility to win a prize or a monetary reward, but this needs to be carefully managed to avoid the risk to influence or bias the respondent. Other forms of incentives may be a privileged access to results, for example, a customized report benchmarking each respondent with the overall sample. In the IPS project, we implemented all the suggestions discussed so far. After retrieving email and telephone contact for the sampled companies, we contacted them personally, presenting the project and proposing to participate. We ensured confidentiality of information and promised a customized report allowing respondents to benchmark themselves with the overall sample, both national and international. Usually, once an individual has agreed to participate, a deadline for completing the survey is given to avoid losing momentum. Even if the survey is self-administered, it is important to offer support in case of need. Once the deadline is passed, a follow-up call is needed to those who have not responded yet or are still in progress, proposing a new deadline. Usually it is good practice to try to follow up a couple of times to solicit complete answers and increase the response rate. Now that we have finally collected our data, we need to control and prepare them for the analysis.